Hi, my name is Zoe Daly and I'm the founder of Eru. We make Irish woolen blankets that are reclaiming an ancient way of working with the land and working with the sacred sheep to make these beautiful blankets. So I call the company Eru after the patron goddess of Ireland. And since working with her, I've been working with the energies of many of these Celtic goddesses for many years now. And they are inviting me to remember and reclaim also some of their ancient wisdom. So, this is one of the things they wanted me to remember, and I'm sharing it with you. The first thing is an introduction to the sovereignty goddess, to that concept, which is what Eru was described as. She was described as a sovereignty goddess. And so were many other of the Celtic goddesses, such as the Morrigan, Queen Maeve, and these were members of the Tuatha De Danann, which were an ancient race of beings that lived in Ireland. They were described as a divine race of beings, a magical race of beings. What I believe this means is that they were, embodied Christ consciousness. And I believe they were in Ireland to raise the consciousness of the land and yeah, they came in and they took over from another race, and then they stayed there. I believe they were caretakers and guardians of the land, and I believe that they were seeding a consciousness, a higher consciousness there. So they were eventually invaded and by an incoming race, which then the story goes that they then receded into the hills and they became the she, which is another description of kind of a fairy race. So Eru herself was noted as, the patron goddess of Ireland, as Ireland got her name from Eru. So when they were being invaded by this race, Eru climbed to the top of a tall mountain with her sisters, and they struck a deal that the land would be called after her name in remembrance of them, which it is to this day. So they wanted me to talk about the description of the sovereignty goddess and what that really means. It's described in history as sovereignty goddess. These were known as and described as in kind of historical accounts and mythological accounts of being goddesses associated with parts of the land. So all the different parts of Ireland would be associated with a different sovereignty goddess, and that goddess would be responsible for bestowing sovereignty onto the king of that land. So I find we hear a lot in our history about the high kings of Ireland, and they were associated with, there was 4 or 6, it depends, royal sites where these kings were inaugurated, and they were there was also a main royal site called Tara, where the High King was crowned here, and he was also known as kind of the King of Ireland. So a lot is said about them, and not so much is talked about the sovereignty goddesses. So that's what I feel they're bringing back into our remembrance now, for good reason. So a little bit about the sovereignty goddesses, what they were, what I believe they were, and what they've described to me as, was really that they embodied sovereignty. What this means is that they describe this as embodying the original template of hierogamic union, which is an embodied balance of divine masculine, divine feminine energies, into a whole holistic balance. This is interesting to me because they were called the Tuatha De Danann, which is in English means the tribe of Danu. Danu was a goddess, or also like a reference to the divine feminine, I believe, to the Great Mother, to these kind of, matriarchal cultures, which there were many of around the planet. But the Tuatha De Danann, for me, showed by their description, the tribe of Danu, that they were in rightful balance with these divine masculine feminine energies, which I understand is kind of the opposite of how the world operates today, where it's very kind of toxic masculine led within society and within ourselves. It's based on kind of competition and force and division, all of those kind of negative masculine, which also topples over the feminine, and that can become toxic. Whereas I believe they were embodying the opposite of this, which was really where the divine feminine energies are leading, not in a better than way, just in this is the way it was balanced almost, because I believe of the birthing energy of the feminine and birthing creation, that this order was respected and was in rightful balance, rightful relationship within themselves and within their community. And they also, this then extended to the land. And this is what I believe they were doing by embodying these energies in this way. They were serving their community and their land, because everything is connected. And then was bringing all of this into a healthy balance. So really, that displays to me in the sense that they trusted this divine feminine leadership, in the role of the sovereignty goddess, who would be the one who spoke for the land. She was associated with different parts of the land, so she spoke for that area of the land, and would decide then through these ceremonies and rituals of sacred marriage rituals, she would decide who was the rightful king. And this was done through a series of rituals, which I'll speak about in another one. But essentially, the point was that the community and the men trusted that the sovereignty goddess, who embodied these energies within herself, was the right one to choose, the rightful king, who would also have these energies balanced within himself. So really, that, the other aspects of the sovereignty goddess, apart from choosing the bestowing sovereignty upon the king, to protect and guardian the land, they embodied this within themselves. They bestowed it upon the king. They bestowed sovereignty, and I also believe that the sovereignty goddesses referred to their capacity for parthenogenetic birthing. So I believe they were working with this ability to conceive themselves, through as there were many cultures doing around the world, which I have learned a lot of this understanding from Marguerite Rigoglioso, who's done a lot of research and writing into the concept of divine birthing and parthenogenetic birthing, also immaculate conception, the same what Mother Mary did with Jesus, that she wove his soul into her womb. I believe these sovereignty goddesses were also practicing this type of divine birth, and they were working with their their divine masculine energies in this way, working with the sun gods, Lu and the Dagda. And I believe this was displayed throughout the land, throughout the sacred sites. Even Newgrange, for me, is is a display of this. The light comes in on the winter solstice into this dark chamber, which represents the womb, and enlightens it and highlights the triskel, the triple spiral. I believe that's a display of this divine birthing capacity. So I believe that's another reason they were called a sovereignty goddess, is the ability to impregnate themselves. And I believe this was done with the protection of the divine masculines, with the protection and assistance of the kings, not necessarily to impregnate them. And there were different methods of this that Marguerite describes in her work, but more so to protect their ability to do this, the capacity to do this. And the point of this was, I believe, to bring in these divine beings to essentially enlighten the planet, to bring more light to the land, to the planet, to continue bringing in these Christed beings, embodiments of Christ consciousness, to seed and continue these lineages, because I believe they came in at a time of a lower vibration where there was a battle for the sacred land, and I believe they came in to enlighten it, to bring this light. So I believe the sovereignty goddesses led this and were respected in this way by the kings and by the communities to have this responsibility. And that's not to say that they were better than anyone or didn't need the masculine. They needed the divine masculine energies corrected within themselves, for sure, and then also within their community. And that's why the bestowing of sovereignty on the rightful kings were so important, because they were the guardians that protected and enabled this safe birthing, I believe. And I believe this is written into our myths in encoded ways. And I believe that's what a lot of the battles were about when they did get invaded. And I believe that essentially they came to protect and be guardians of this land, to raise the consciousness of the land, and bring in these divine lineages, these royal lineages, essentially, out of service to the earth and to her inhabitants. So that's just a little bit about the sovereignty goddess. And the point of all this, why they're sharing this with me, is that I feel that they are really coming back into our collective consciousness now, and they're coming back at this time, this important time on our planet, to help us remember. They assure me that we remember, especially in our hearts, especially the women, but especially just that divine feminine energetic remembrance, which is in men and women, especially anyone with a connection to these Celtic goddesses, and I believe that is for everybody, that they assure me that we have remembrance of this divine original template of hierogamic union, that the sovereignty goddess embodies. What we have it within our hearts, and that we can remember and re-embody that, and that will be a way of rebalancing, not just serving ourselves, because to be in this balance, I believe, is a much more constructive way to live, but that it also ripples out to our families, to our communities, and I believe it ripples out to the earth as well. Restoring this sacred marriage of rightful balance between divine feminine, divine masculine, where the divine feminine is, the energy that we first listen to, that we respect these energies, which mean, intuition, receptivity, like receiving divine intuition, receiving communion and guidance from your own divine connection, being receptive and listening also to the earth, and being in communion with her as a divine feminine being that she is, receiving and being guided by all this wisdom through our own intuition, and then creating from that point, and engaging our own divine masculine energies then to make these creations possible through action steps, through protection of our own selves, our own energy fields and intuitions. And that's the way I believe these divine masculine feminine energies work in our everyday when we are embodying them. So that's a little bit about the sovereignty goddess and what I believe that they were. I believe that much of this has been written out of our history, or it's just been glossed over, and I'm really interested to go back to this original template of the sovereignty goddess and learn to embody it myself, which is what I believe is a better way to live. So thanks for listening, and I hope that was interesting.